Hi there, and welcome to NMI's thoughts on the future of UK parking in a post-pandemic world. We're coming to you today on a sunny Monday morning in our Bristol office in the UK. I'm Kanan Keeney. I'm a product manager here at NMI, and I'm joined today by my colleague Peter Alcock, who is in our product marketing department.
Thanks very much, Kanan.
Oh, no, wonderful. We really can't wind up thinking about 2020 without mentioning the global pandemic that we've gone through. And where we want to focus today a little bit is how that's impacted onto the parking segment specifically. So Pete, when you think of post-pandemic world, I mean, what are one of the first things that come to your mind as it impacts on the parking industry?
Well, obviously, the first thing that springs to mind is people's reluctance to touch equipment, to touch pin pads in a retail store. The preference has been for contactless payments wherever it's possible. We imagine that in the parking industry, local authorities, parking operators that run pay and display machines will probably have seen a downturn in their revenues from coin and card as more and more people are using their own mobile, which they feel safer to interact with to make a payment.
No, yeah, fair. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've seen that the growth in e-commerce has gone up. According to my data here, 36% year on year in 2020 in the UK. So phenomenal growth in e-commerce. And of course, that also transcends to a mobile phone. But I guess in terms of parking, in my mind, that equates to paying ahead to kind of book in advance maybe, but then also things like QR codes and that kind of payment.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's the appification of our lives. As mobile phones become ubiquitous, we start to see the type of apps now that plot out in your locality, the places where you can park. Sometimes the apps denote the cost of parking, and so they guide you into finding a parking space. And the next thing you can do, of course, is to pay on that app, pay in advance for your parking space. You get the alerts when your time is about to expire. So the whole thing is becoming much more phone-centric.
Interesting. But then what would you say for people who maybe are adverse to phones? Is there a way to be contact-free without using your phone? Because of course we need to be inclusive of people maybe that don't want to have a smartphone.
Absolutely, yeah. My mother still drives. She's in her 80s. Sure. She doesn't have a smartphone. She doesn't have the internet even. So yes, absolutely, it's got to be available to all. One can't discriminate. So the means of payment by card on the actual terminal itself still needs to remain. We're not suggesting for a moment that mobile phone payment can completely replace all of the card readers and the terminals that we've spent so much time integrating and getting to work. So it's an alternative. We're looking at flexibility and choice for users.
No, of course. And then kind of touching on that, so a really interesting thing that's happened in card payments recently is the increase of the contactless limits. So those going up recently to £45 in the UK, and just on the horizon we've got £100 coming up. So in terms of parking, I think that's quite a significant impact on what you can do with a card.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there are obviously a few indoor car parks in metropolitan areas that you could conceivably have to pay more than £100 depending on how far you stayed. But the likelihood is that the vast majority of parking will be able to be paid for with a tap or a swipe of a mobile phone using the wallet capability. And this even extends out to pay on foot type installations. If you had a week's parking at an airport, for instance, then it could conceivably come within that £100 and you'd be able to tap out completely touch-free.
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed quite a lot from talking to some of our different parking customers is I think a lot of integrators now have taken this opportunity of less footfall to rethink and reimagine how their parking solutions work. So instead of having solutions that cater for pin pads and kind of a large modular unit. Instead, you could have feasibly a contactless only reader at an exit, and that's going to service most needs in parking at this point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, other thing that I wanted to touch on, EV charging. So, I've been talking to more and more integrators, and it seems like the growth of EV charging is kind of synonymous with the parking experience now. That people like the idea of being able to park and charge your car at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, in the UK, they're looking at withdrawing or banning the sale of new diesel and petrol vehicles by 2030. So all of those cars driving around, people aren't going to stop using their cars. Home charging will only go so far, but we can imagine that the majority of inner city car parks are going to need to churn over probably 20, 30 or even more % of their parking spaces will need to be equipped with the ability to charge electric vehicles.
And I suppose, kind of linking the two, that charging experience could be done either via your phone or it could also be done via a card, right? So it becomes part of that payment experience as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean the current EV charging structure throughout the UK is a mixture of account-based, so you set up an account with your particular charging provider, and it automatically gets billed, and you pay retrospectively. But the majority of EV charging points all have the ability to take payment then and there. So you tap with your contactless card, and we support a number of those installations through our partners and distributors. Absolutely, yeah.
So on top of EV charging, what other things do you think we can expect to start seeing in the parking garage? So, historically it used to be you go and you park your car and that was the service. But now we're starting to see EV charging and things like that come in. Feasibly, do you think we'll see other value-added services come into that arena?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I mean things like they could become scooter hubs. Electric scooters are in the news just this morning as more London boroughs roll out their, I think it's 6 London boroughs start today with a plan of EV scooters. So you could maybe drive into a car park on the edge of town, and then you pick up the electric scooter and you zoom into your office by that means.
Absolutely, yeah. And then I suppose it does depend on the environment, right? So this kind of transportation hub, like you're describing it, that's very suitable for like a London environment. But then feasibly, maybe a place like an airport might have other value-added services. I know something we were talking about the other day was valet, and whether or not UK culture merges with a valet.
Yes, I mean valet parking is hugely popular in the US. I mean they have a great deal more space to be able to make vast car parks, and you turn up at a restaurant, you give the valet guy your keys, and he goes off and parks your cars. In the UK, that's almost a foreign concept. The only place I think we've seen valet has been at airports where. I think when Virgin started in the UK with their upper class, included was the valet service. So you would drive up to Heathrow or Gatwick, and they would take your car to an off-airport parking lot. Whether we're ready for that yet in the UK, I don't know.
Yet to be seen, definitely.
People are very, their car is an extension of their home. It's a possession. To hand over the keys to something as beloved as your German luxury car is something maybe we're not quite ready for yet.
Maybe it's something just that Americans like me would wind up using when they're visiting, rather than the UK public. Yet to be seen.
But if it needs to be paid for, we've got a solution.
Well, quite right, and I think that's where we'd like to end today. We've got a video of, we were lucky enough to do a pilot with Mastercard, which is now ongoing, for their tap-to-phone solution. And essentially what this does is it enables a commercial mobile phone to turn into a payment acceptance device. So we were very proud to be involved and chosen as their gateway partner for this. And we put through the first Mastercard tap-to-phone transaction in the United States very recently. So thanks a lot for joining us today. We'll follow up with that video, And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, Pete, or just via our standard NMI email address that you'll find on our website. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.
This is a quick demo of our Cloud POS app. This is the login screen, and we're logging into the application that is located on the merchant's smartphone. Within the application, there is a menu on the left-hand side offering a few options to the merchant. First option is the payment acceptance screen. Second option is transactions, where the merchant could view a transaction history by the day, by week, and by month. You could also search a transaction by entering a receipt number, date, or amount. Additionally, there is a settings menu, which offers a merchant to enter a currency, discounts, tip, or set up a tax. For example, I could set a default tax rate of 1% right here. Lastly, the menu offers options such as email us, call us, give us feedback, or FAQs within the support bucket. Let's walk through the payment flow. We're going to add a few items to the cart to charge our customer. Item number one, $1. We hit the plus sign, item number two, and item number three. If the merchant wants to review the cart, they would hit the little cart button up the top, and it would bring the merchant to the detailed view with the cart items and subsequent taxes that were applied. Now we are ready to charge the customer. Once we hit charge, the customer brings the card close to the phone. Transaction is authorizing, and sonic sound, which is Mastercard brand sound, indicates that transaction was successful. There is an option to send a receipt just by entering an email, a phone number, or scanning a QR code. And then lastly, if the merchant wants to void any transaction, they would go to the transaction history menu, swipe left on the transaction, after which they would enter their username and password to get this done.